Yeah.
I was gonna tell you. Another reason I didn't like it is that there was no primary in the Democratic election. I
Right.
felt like they forced
Yes.
Kamala on us. It's not that
Yes.
necessarily I didn't hate her.
Yeah.
Like I thought she did good in the debate, but I just was like, we didn't go through a democratic process to elect
Yeah.
her. We were forced on her.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, or she was forced on us, I should say. So I was like, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel like democracy.
Right.
You know, so I didn't like that. But I don't like Trump, and I just was like, you know what, I'm gonna vote, just to exercise my right and everything. But I didn't like either one really.
Right. I think that was a problem a lot of people had. Aside from the economy and stuff, people had a problem with her being forced on us. And then not just that, then you see like Obama trying to shame us and Michelle trying to shame us into voting. Oh, then you have a problem with a woman being president. I'm like, bro, nobody elected her. You know what I'm saying? There was no primary. So
And also, that's a good thing too, in terms of a woman president, because the first female president, we don't want it to be somebody like even Hillary. I thought, not. I voted for Bernie Sanders way back then.
Oh, me too.
I didn't really want Hillary either, but let's say Hillary would have won. There's always gonna be people who are gonna say, "Yo, she was Bill Clinton's wife." You know what I mean? Like there was something there. And then if Kamala would have won, it would have been like, well, she had to go through the back door. She didn't even get elected in a primary.
Right.
And you don't really want that for the first female president. You want to vote for a woman who's like, yo, this woman earned her keep here. Like she was her own person, and she.
I think
And we'll get that one.
I agree with you. I know we're gonna have a female president. I think that when we get a female president, and I hope that she's a good example to follow for women to say you don't have to go through the back door. You don't have to exactly. You don't have to go through the back door. You could work yourself there, gain the trust of the people.
Of course, my name's Danny.
Danny, how old are
That's
you?
it. 45 years old.
All right.
45.
Where and how did you grow up?
Grew up right here in the Bronx, Boogie Down Bronx. I was born and raised. Grew up in Gun Hill Projects. Spent the first 20 years of my life there. Been in New York almost my whole life. Pretty much my whole life, and I still live here now in the Bronx. So.
Cool. How was your upbringing?
Rough. Rough but fun. I mean, New York back in, because I'm 45. I was born in 1979, so we're talking about my childhood was the 80s. My teenage years were the 90s.
Right.
Just New York City in the 80s was real rough, everywhere. The Bronx was crazy back then. This is the crack era, so this is like dope fiends, crackheads everywhere, high crime, all that stuff. But it was also a lot of fun. I always tell people all the time, like, if there was any place to grow up in the ghetto, it's New York City. Because, we had a lot of fun. Also, just growing up back then, I got to see, we were growing up with hip-hop. You know what I mean? Breakdancing, graffiti on the trains and everything. And look at what hip-hop is now, this worldwide cultural phenomenon, that just affects everything. Music, culture, fashion, everything. And it's like, yo, I'm from where that's from, and I got to see that, firsthand growing up. I love my upbringing. I had a lot of fun. Things were rough just because we were poor, and like I said, all the crime and stuff. But I grew up in a really big family, big Puerto Rican family. So there was always a lot of support and care. Times are real rough, But I can't say that I regret anything about my upbringing. I had a lot of fun growing up, especially teenage years in the 90s. That's when I really started getting out there doing graffiti. I'm an artist, I guess I mentioned that's a big part of my personality.
Awesome.
I'm a rapper, so,
Awesome.
I write songs.
Great.
I do open mics and stuff like that. I paint, I
when
draw.
Did you start rapping?
I was 10 or 11, I think, when I wrote my first verse.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was young.
What inspired you to write?
Like I said, man, just
Growing up around it?
music, growing up around it, and by the time the late '80s, early '90s hit, the radio had rap music on,
Right.
For that. The only thing is, back then when I was a real little kid, you don't realize that you're watching hip hop. This is just to us, it was just going outside to play. You know,
Right.
we're going outside to play. We're playing manhunt. We're playing tag,
Right.
whatever. You know, around the block, and we're growing up around. Also, there's the older kids were breakdancing, and there's graffiti.
Right.
And today, you look back on that stuff. You watch movies like Wild Style, Beach Street. You know, all that stuff came out when I was a kid. And that's the stuff that exposed it to the rest of the world. For us, we were just living life growing up in our neighborhoods.
Right.
So that's the cool part about it. But yeah, and then the 90s came around, and when you're a teenager, you go get into trouble with your friends and go out and do stuff. I started going out and doing graffiti. I also loved comic books, reading comic books when I was a kid. So I think those two things inspired me to be an artist together.
Oh, wow.
Comic books
Yeah.
and graffiti. Those are the two things I wanted to do. So those are like the start of kind of dreams for me. And then I love sports. My father loves sports too. So in the house we were always watching the Yankees or whatever. My dad put me in Little League. Baseball's big in the Bronx, obviously. Just huge Latino population. We play baseball. You know what I'm saying? Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, and so yeah, Little League. And so I think those were like my first two dreams, is like art.
Yeah.
And I'll just say creative in general, like art, music, and sports. You know what I mean? Because I think I know, right? We're going into that realm of like career, profession, and kind of thing.
No, that's cool.
So that'll go there for it. But
that's cool, man. That's cool. Was there anybody from your time that rapped and got famous?
that I knew
That
personally.
you met personally, yeah.
No,
Okay.
I don't think. No, I met rappers after they were famous. Like I went to shows and stuff like that.
Okay.
But no, there was no one that I knew
Yeah.
that was a nobody and then blew up and got famous.
Okay.
But there were some famous rappers that went to my high school. So I was in high school from 93 to 97. I went to the High School of Art and Design in Manhattan, an art high school. Took a test to get in. Actually failed the first time. When I was in junior high school and I took that test to go in as a freshman,
Yeah.
I didn't get into school. And I ended up going to graphic arts at Hell's Kitchen.
Okay.
That school was rough back then, a lot of gangs and stuff. And then I tried again, and you only have one more shot, to transfer in as a sophomore, basically, or, if take that test your freshman year.
Right.
And I took it again and I passed, and then I went in and I was so happy because I really wanted to go to art and design, and I love art. I want to, whatever, I want to be this comic book artist or whatever. And then I go to art and design, I get in that school, and so I'm taking art classes. And then you got to remember, this is an art high school with 2,000 students.
Right.
How many of those people you think were graffiti writers? Like a shit ton. Like, bro, like everybody, the bathrooms in that school were crazy. So that is the moment actually when, a lot of friends and I, we would start to we'd hang out, we're young, 14, 15, 16, and back then we didn't have cell phones. Parents couldn't keep track of you, right? It's just I tell my mother, I'm going over to I had a friend, Carlos back then, I'm going over to Los's house, I'm going to my friend Vinny's house, my friend AB, shout out, those are all my boys who were AB from Gun Hill. Hope you're doing well, brother. Paul and all them, and we would meet up and we would go out bombing, tagging, doing graffiti. All that stuff was fun, man. Like I said, it's we were poor, but I don't feel like I had a bad childhood. I had a lot of fun growing up. You know what I mean?
And a lot of time, and I say this, I can't stress it enough. It's the experience is a lot better than the money. Whatever material thing you can give your kid. It's allowing your kid to be a kid and have fun and explore and just enjoy life as a kid is a lot better than just buying every single toy that you see.
Right.
So I think that's the difference now and then. It's now all these kids are being stimulated by the iPod and all that stuff, all the games or the toys. They're being overly stimulated, so they end up depressed.
Right. It's worse now, though.
Exactly.
It's worse because we had video games in there. We had Sega, Nintendo, and shit. But we had the games in the house. So when we went outside to play. You know what I'm saying? We went outside to play basketball, to play handball in the court, whatever. We were riding our bikes. We were playing manhunt. Like I said, we were doing all that stuff. But today, the video games and the screens follow the kids outside the house. They got phones. They have, tablets.
Right.
So when they're with their parents in the car, they're going outside, they're riding the train, they're not really interacting and playing with each other that much. you know. So it's even worse for the kids now. It's harder for them to disconnect.
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah,
because this stuff is addictive.
It,
you know?
I was just gonna say that it is. It is. I think that was the worst thing that happened. Having those apps on, having those apps on the phone.
You said apps, so I was like, let me take off my shirt now.
Yeah, having those apps, oh, whatever,
apps,
man.
applications.
Yeah. On the phone was the worst thing that happened.
Yeah.
Was the worst thing that happened. Because it's like you said, it's like now you can't, it feels like you can't disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
You know, back then we had the video games, we had social media, right? But we had it on the computer. We had to wait to get home to use it.
Yeah, to use it, right.
Now,
right.
like, and then when we went to schools, even though our phones didn't have social media, they didn't allow us to have our phones in there, right? Because, you know, it was a distraction. Nowadays, they just
let you have it. Yeah.
You have it.
Yeah, I mean, you're more like my younger brother. I have so I have a lot of siblings. I have older brother, younger brother, older sister, younger sister.
Yeah.
Older stepbrother, younger stepbrother. So I'm like right in the middle.
Yeah.
And you know, we're like a modern family, like, you know, Hispanic modern family. There's several parents involved in making all of us or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, two of my siblings passed away. You know, my older brother passed away years ago. And then more recently, a few years ago, one of my stepbrothers passed away from COVID. I was telling you that before we started recording.
What do you do for a living?
Right now, I do property management.
Management.
I do property management, which is under the umbrella of real estate, basically. Right. So I got my real estate license in 2017. So that was 8 years ago. So that's what and I work in property management now. So I could kind of backtrack and just go through from the beginning, like all the way through. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
how did you start? How?
Like because we were talking about like high school, right? So
right.
In those high school years, you know, I'm going to an art high school.
Yeah.
So I feel like at that point, my original, I guess, dream and goal was like still on track, right? I had this thing that I wanted to do. You know, be like a comic book artist, you know, penciler or inker or something like that, you know, work for Marvel or DC one day.
Right.
Well, actually, my original dream was to play third base for the Yankees. But there's a point where you realize you're not that good. You're not that good. Yeah. You ain't that nice, so like you have to, you know, you give up that. That was probably the first dream that like died out for it. But yeah, so that was, you know, the original thing, and I've always played sports. I was always a big part of, like, we met lifeguarding at the beach, you know what I mean? So swimming was a big part of it. But baseball and swimming were the two main sports that I did growing up. And then swimming kind of took over at some point. And then, so yeah, you know, that dream of, I guess, playing for the Yankees one day or whatever, you know, being in the major leagues, that goes away. But other dreams and goals start to take shape, right? So two things are happening. One, I'm in art high school, so I feel like I am actually trying to pursue, you know, a profession, you know, be a professional artist one day in the future. And it's hard. It's hard to think about your future when you're like, you know, in your you're a young teenager, and, you know, trying to think about the future. Hindsight's 2020. I could talk about all this now, but back then I just didn't have the wherewithal. I just wanted to draw. I like drawing. I like doing graffiti. I liked rapping. So we would have rap battles in the lunchroom. We have ciphers, you know, writing rhymes, freestyling. And so that was another goal of mine. It was like, I want to be a famous rapper, you know. Okay. I want to make albums and perform on stage. And, you know, so I'm older. That's what I was going to say, actually, when I started talking about my siblings, is you're like their generation. My younger brother and sister, my younger brother's 10 years younger than me. My younger sister's 13 years younger than me. So you guys were like the beginning of cell phones when they were in high school. They didn't let you have, like, cell phones didn't exist when I was in high school. Like, if you had a cell phone, you were a drug dealer. You know what I mean? Like, nobody, like, we had beepers in high school. Even that was like later on in high school. You know, no one had a cell phone. You had a pager. You know, pages you go to a payphone and call them back or whatever. So we had a lot more. Our lives, I guess, were more secret, like from our parents and stuff. So we would get into trouble, and, you know, nothing was traceable for it. But yeah, so I think And when I say this, I mean this like sincerely. Like, I had the vision in my mind, like, I'm gonna be a famous rapper one day.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm gonna, the same way I'm listening to the radio.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is like early mid 90s, you know, KRS-One and Nas and, you know, Biggie was still
Right.
alive and, you know, you know, Mobb Deep went to my high school. They weren't there when I was there. They're older than me. But, you know, so there were like famous people that went to the high school of art and design. Ralph Lauren,
Right.
Calvin Klein, I think, went there. One of them didn't graduate, but like a lot of Tony Bennett, the singer, went to art and design.
Yeah.
So a lot of famous creative people went to my high school. A lot of famous creative New Yorkers, which is really cool, you know, to have that alumni. But yeah, so, you know, I'm listening to the radio, Wu-Tang Clan and Fat Joe and Nas, and, you know, everybody's, you know, making all this, and like, yo, this is what I love this music. Everybody loved it. And I had a lot of friends who thought the same way. And so that was the idea. Back then, we didn't have social media. There weren't any YouTube. You know, you couldn't really, the way today, if you want to figure something out, we didn't have the internet. I didn't have a computer till I was 17.
Yeah.
Right? My senior year of high school, you know, I think my father and my stepmother bought like a used computer for the house. I didn't have email till I was already outside of high school. I was 18 years old. I think it was the summer right after high school that I got my first email. So I went through high school without email. So, you know, I try to say this, especially for like, if you're younger watching this, you know, to put it's not just like a age and years thing. Like, life was different back then. You know, we got information from newspapers, from magazines. You know,
You had to read.
You had to read. You had to buy books. You wanted to know something, you can't just be like, what's the definition of this word? And like look it up in your phone.
Yeah.
No, you had a dictionary. You had a thesaurus. You went to the library, Point Pica system, whatever, Dewey Decimal, like, you know, and you find books and you go read them. So it took longer to look up information. We didn't realize it because now we realize, you know.
Yeah.
And I try to remember that to realize how convenient life is today. That it wasn't like that back then. But that being said, I feel like we were a little more self-reliant. You know, like everyone had more resilience back then, which I think kids today probably struggle with a little bit more.
Yeah.
And it's not their fault. That's just what they're growing up with.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, and then so just kind of moving past that, you know, graduate from high school, like I said, get an email address, whatever, and then life starts taking weird turns because you're like, well, how do I become what I want to become, right? Today it's different. You could, if you really want to do it, like you have a setup here, you know, like you have a goal and vision, like, yo, I'm gonna set this up, and you know, you don't have to worry about, yo, I gotta send my videotapes into some media outlet and see if they'll, you know, hire me or put my show. No, you want to do it, you record this, you put the damn thing on YouTube. Like, there are outlets that you can do, right? You're a rapper, you want to put stuff out, put it out there, get it on SoundCloud, on Spotify, you know. The outlets weren't there. So for me, it's like, I have to hopefully one day just get lucky that I'm on a street corner with my friends, you know, in a cypher, and some record executive decides, like, yo, this dude's nice, I'm going to sign him. And so things felt super impossible at that point, you know. And then you start to think about, all right, I don't want to be poor when I grow up, so I got to go to college. You know what I mean? Like, this is probably not the route. And then you start to realize, like, oh man, like these dreams that I have, they might not happen, and I have to be prepared for that. And that's okay. Like, there's only, you know, the music industry is like a 1 in a million thing. You know, like you have to, you know, be talented and also just it takes some luck, I think, you know, to do that. So I don't want anyone who's like a musician or artist to think.
A lot of talented people don't make it.
A lot of talented, super talented
and
people.
a lot of people that don't have enough talent make it.
It's I mean, I listen to music sometimes, and I'm like, you know, a lot of it's good music, but I just like, I've met people and present myself at. There's a lot of rappers out there I'm just way nicer than. And I know people. Growing up with people, you will never hear about these people ever. And like, they are the best rappers you'll ever hear, or the best singers, or whatever, or artists, or, you know, musicians, or whatever it is. I've gone to jam sessions and, like I said, open mics and, you know, hole in the wall spots downtown where people perform, and like, man, super talented people, and you know, they'll never be famous probably. So it's just one of those things. And so when that realization sets in, it's like, well, what am I going to do with my life? So I at least was in an art high school. So when I went to college, at first I didn't go. I was like, I'm just gonna take some time off of high school,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't sure where that was gonna pan out. At the time, I had started lifeguarding for the city, so I started lifeguarding at Cortona Pool. So several things are happening at the same time, right? I'm a swimmer, so swimming has taken me into this direction of work and field. I'm an artist, so I'm getting my education in art.
Right.
You know, like I said, baseball at that point I think had faded already, like late teens, and then I have, I'm still rapping. I love to rap. I want to make music. I don't know how. I don't have money to buy equipment, to make beats and stuff like that. I'm just a dude with a pen, and my notebook, my rhyme book, doing that. So after spending some time off from high school, that I took several months off. So that semester, I guess, this was 1997. So I graduated high school in 97. So late 97, it was like horrible. I was so bored.
Right.
I had friends that had gone away to college upstate or somewhere far away, and other friends who were working. And then it was like, those of us who didn't go, it's like, what was I doing? For the first time in my life, I felt like I had no aim. Because you're still young, you still want to hang out with your boys and do everything. So I'm not doing anything but just hanging out on the block. You know what I mean? And I was going nowhere, and I realized like this is silly. I need to go to school. So I decided to go to BMCC and just sign up, for the spring course in '98.
Yeah.
And I was like, I got to start college. You know what I mean? And so I started doing that, and going to school and just taking regular liberal arts classes. And I was like, all right, I got to get an education. I should be working towards a degree. And this is where the hopes and dreams, your childhood hopes and dreams, can start to really like veer off, because once you're in school, you focus on classes and you're doing something good. Getting an education is important, and then you veered off. And then I went to visit a friend in my boy Manny, shout out Mad Dog, Kingsbridge. I went to visit him at New Paltz, right? He had went away to school at New Paltz. And we went up there, me and my boys, we were all from here in the Bronx, went to visit him. And we went to like a college party up there, whatever. I'm like, yo, I'm missing out, man. I feel like I'm missing out on the real college experience, Right. And so at some point, I was in BMCC for 2.5 years, and I decided to go away for school. I had a friend who I had met through the city when I worked at Cortona Pool, who was from Maryland. My boy Roger, shout out Roger, DJ Nika, what's up? And I went with him to Maryland one day, visit his family. He went to school at University of Maryland. I'm walking around the campus of University of Maryland. Again, the same thing that happened to me in New Paltz. It's like, man, I need to go away for school. I'm missing out on this college experience, And so that inspired me too. And long story short, eventually I ended up transferring schools from BMCC to Buffalo. Right now, when I went to Buffalo, I majored in graphic design. One of the reasons I chose that school is because they had a graphic design. So I'm still thinking like an artist. You know what I mean? Our high school, BMCC, was just a regular community college. Borough of Manhattan Community College. It's in Manhattan downtown. And I go to Buffalo, and everything I think really changed for me. I had never really lived outside the city. I had never really, aside from going to Puerto Rico for summers to visit family when I was a kid, I had never really been anywhere. It was just New York and Puerto Rico my whole life. And so to be like upstate in a different environment, was just totally, I don't know how to put it, like the experience was helpful. Do you know what I mean? Because you grow as a person. When you get taken out of what you're used to, you grow as a person. And there was still a lot of kids, and it was odd because, all of a sudden, I'm used to just being in an urban environment, and you go upstate, and then you're in this like college, living out there. It's not just going to school, right? Like staying in dorms and stuff like that. To me, it was a wonderful experience, but it was tough. I remember 3 weeks in, I don't share this story with a lot of people, but 3 weeks in to being in Buffalo, I remember laying down in my bed in my dorm, lights off, and I actually started like tearing up a little bit, like thinking of like, what the fuck am I doing here? You know what I mean? Like that's how different it felt to me, And you gravitate to who you're close to. So like the other city kids, I think we all gravitated to, towards each other.
Yeah.
And then that experience made me want to do more in life, because I realized, you start to realize, oh wow, the world is so much bigger than where I grew up.
Right.
So I'm taking my graphic design classes, working towards my degree, and then I decide to study abroad. Right, because like I said, I left home to go away to college.
Right.
Buffalo's in New York, but it's 8 hours away.
Yeah.
It's far from New York City, and I don't know. I had this desire to just see more of the world at that point.
Yeah.
And so I got into the study abroad program and went to Spain and studied abroad in Spain for a semester. Completely changed my life. Like completely changed my life. Going and being in Europe and living there for 4 months and going to school there, it was like somebody just took the world and flipped it upside down.
Wow.
Everything was different. I mean, this was 2003, so there were still like payphones here and in Europe.
Right.
But I remember going to a payphone and just I didn't even know how to. Everything looks different. Like the doorknobs are not on the side; they're in the middle of the door. Like this random little things would be very, very different. And it was amazing. Yeah, it was really cool. It was actually, I had a professor, my art history professor in Buffalo. She was trying to convince me to study abroad in Italy. And to go to this program in Italy, in Siena, Italy. And I was like, man, that sounds like a wonderful idea, go live in Europe. And she's like, yeah. I, for some reason, wanted to go to South America, for two reasons. One, if I went to Italy, I would have to take, I think, 2 semesters of Italian or something like that. Right. Where if I go to a Spanish-speaking country, my Spanish wasn't perfect, but I knew it from my family and stuff. I speak it, I understand it. All you have to do is take the test and pass, and you don't have to deal with taking classes or whatever. Right. But that's how the thought hit me. I was like, well, I can go to Europe if I go to Spain, because obviously Spain, they speak Spanish, and that's how I ended up going to Spain, Valencia, Spain, where I studied abroad. Yeah. And that experience changed me. Now, when I was in Spain, the courses I was studying were art, so art, history, culture, all these things. I love history, I love culture. So even studying abroad, my brain is still on art and art history, and you're going to museums, and this is still part of what I want to be, growing up. So there was always a part of me that was moving in the direction of art. Now, mind you, even in college, I was still rapping, I remember winning this rap battle with 16 rappers off campus. Some people set up this rap tournament, and I won. I think I won $200 cash, which to me as a broke ass college student was a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But things in Buffalo, the cost of living was cheaper, and just being in college. So, and that's when when did you start working at the beach? I don't know.
That was
late 2000s, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, so we didn't meet back then, but
right.
I started lifeguarding at 17, 97. I was at Cortona Pool those summers.
I think you had you had a year or 11 years before I started.
Something like that, yeah. But the reason I mentioned the beach is because those years that I was in college, those summers between those years in Buffalo, I was lifeguarding at Orchard Beach. Right. So I was lifeguarding through the summers or whatever. And whatever money I made from the summer, I was saving. That money, things were so cheap in Buffalo that money would last me all of fall semester. Wow. The money that I made lifeguarding in the summer at the beach for it. So, yeah, and then, once I graduated from Buffalo, and that's when again, so there's always pivotal moments that shift, right? That's where things change hardcore. Right. Because I didn't want to stay in Buffalo. I didn't, Buffalo's a great college town, but I didn't really see anything for me there, to do, right? If I want to be, an artist, or still want to somehow be a famous rapper or whatever. Yeah. So I come back home to New York City, and I immediately lifeguard that summer. I at least had a job right away. But once the summer ends, it's oh shoot, what am I gonna do? Now I'm trying to apply for jobs at advertising firms and stuff like that. Trying to get a graphic design job. No real experience, just my education, and now I have a degree now, and nothing is sticking. No one's getting back to me, no one's whatever. I was dating a girl at the time that worked at a hospital, at Mount Sinai Hospital, and her mom worked there, and so they set me up with an interview there, and I started working at the hospital, and then I still had my sports background.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whatever, baseball, particularly swimming, and so that helped me. So I ended up working at Asphalt Green. You know what I mean?
Right.
Wonderful sports sports and fitness complex on the Upper East Side. And I started lifeguarding there. I became a swim instructor. I ended up becoming a manager there, managing the private swim lesson program. And, when life comes at you and you're working full time, you have less time to do all these other things. I have less time to try and figure out some way to get into the record industry, or less time doing my art and doing my graphic design.
Right.
And then before you realize it, time is passing.
Yeah.
And you're doing this one thing. Now, I'm still doing something I love. I love
Right.
swimming. I love sports.
Right.
That was a great, great place to work for sports. I loved the environment,
Yeah.
but it was like the third most desired goal for me, right, would have been to work in sports somehow.
Right.
Whereas, like, I think music and art were really, really my true passions.
Yeah.
So life is moving in that other direction. And I think at some point, so now I'm in my mid 20s, let's say that this starts to spill over into my 30s. And I think when you hit that point, 30 in particular, right? Or late 20s, when you feel 30 coming on, it's like, yo, I'm not living the life that I feel like I'm supposed to be living. I'm
Right.
not doing the dreams and goals that I have,
Yeah.
haven't happened.
Yeah.
And you start to realize that, the people you're hearing on the radio are younger than you are now. The
Yeah.
people getting famous, or the people whatever, and you start to feel like, man, my dreams didn't come true.
Yeah.
And so, and by the way, I don't feel like any of this now. My life is blessed, and I'll get to that, but I don't want to
Yeah.
I want to go through the story
No,
linearly,
no.
because that's what I'm feeling at the moment.
Right.
I'm struggling with money.
Right.
The real world is coming at you. I got my own. I couldn't really move back in. I couldn't move back in with my mother.
Right.
My sister was sleeping in the living room. You know what I mean? Because we had a small apartment. Like I said, family's poor or whatever. But so my mother got my brother and sister, who are teenagers at that point, in the house. I couldn't go back home. To live with them. So I was living with my cousins, splitting rent. We had a 3-bedroom apartment, moved back to Gun Hill, in a building right outside the projects I grew up in. And, just living life as an adulting, figuring it out, paying my own bills now, doing everything on my own. And still trying to think to myself, like, I have these big desires and these big goals,
Right.
And how am I going to accomplish them? And finally feeling like this might never come true. You know what I mean? These things might never come true. So in any case, I worked at Asphalt Green for like 7 or 8 years, doing that, and had a great time, made a lot of great connections. I know, we met at the beach, a lot of people that from the lifeguarding, swimming world, it all connected,
Yeah.
And one of the best things about all of that, this is why everything happens for a reason, man, is I felt like when we lifeguarded at Orchard, like, we were part of a big, 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 like, brotherhood and sisterhood.
Yep.
It was very, like, almost like fraternity, sorority, like,
Yeah.
right? Like, we worked with like 50, 60 people in Orchard Beach, right? And then we had like it was like the Care Bears and the Care Bear cousins. Like, we had, the lifeguards in Rockaway and, Coney and everywhere. And we would hang out with each other. We'd go to bungalow parties in Rockaway and, out here playing softball in Staten Island, having keg parties. They're coming up to play us in basketball. And, like, my life felt full.
Right.
Deep inside, as far as, like, my goals and dreams, those things maybe weren't coming true the way I had pictured them. But I felt like I was having a lot of fun.
Right.
You know what I mean? We were, whatever, going out for drinks in City Island. We were going to house parties. We were going out. And the summers were just so much fun. Like, I think I look back on all those summers at Orchard Beach, man. So much fun. Like, it was by far the most enjoyable job I ever had.
I can say the same thing.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm sure everyone we talked to, right? Like, I was getting paid to catch a tan, work out, because they made us do drills and stuff, and we work out, and I was in the best shape of my life back then. Yeah, I was getting paid to catch a tan, work out, look at women in bikinis, and save a few lives here and there.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, by far, just so amazing. Shout out to all the, guys and girls that, like, we lifeguarded with, man. Great times, everybody. Still keep in touch with a lot of people online. And So yes, that's going on in that moment, and then, so I guess we're getting up to what you asked me what I did now. So um, after Asphalt Green, I started working at Equinox, the high end fitness clubs, and I wanted to have some sales experience,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Just because I felt like the people who I knew that worked in sales were making more money,
Right.
and so I didn't really have sales experience per se,
Mm.
but Equinox worked because Equinox is still in the fitness industry,
Right.
right? So like I have like all these years of sports and whether from from when I was a kid, like playing sports on teams to working in sports to whatever lifeguarding to teaching swimming, and so it was easier for me to get my foot in the sales door by
Mm-hmm.
doing membership sales in fitness, right?
Right.
So got that job, and then I was able to get sales experience. I worked there for like 2.5 years, and then I started thinking about, all right, well, how can I make more money with sales? You know what I mean? So I was like, all right, let me get my real estate license. I knew a few people that did real estate. I have a cousin, shout out to my cousin Corazon, love you. She just had a baby last year. And our boy Alex, Alex from the beach, shout out Alex Hill. He was doing commercial real estate. And I got my best friend Rob, he's in
Yeah.
sales, he does finance, he was, making crazy money. And I'm just like, all right, let me go do this. And so I went and got my real estate license. And I became a real estate agent. And I thought I would love it, and I hated it. I hated it too. Like
Wow.
going around the city and showing people apartments and not really whatever. It just didn't feel, I didn't like it the way I thought I would. And I was struggling with it. And going to some nice buildings, and meeting their in-house like management and leasing teams or whatever, I started to realize I think I should be doing that job, which is property management,
Right.
right? Like it's a different side of real estate,
Yeah.
and so that's how I pivoted and got into property management, which is what I'm doing now. And the reason I say this is because the need to take care of ourselves and pay bills and make money and inflation and whatever's going on in the world, right? The necessity just to like be able to pay bills and put food on the table or keep up with the Joneses or whatever
Right.
starts to move you further and further and further away from what you originally wanted to do
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
what 12-year-old Danny
Yeah.
wanted to do.
Yeah. That's
You
what
know.
happens to a lot of people.
Right, because the fear will set in.
Of course.
And there's this thing that Jim Carrey said. I'm gonna butcher it. I'm not gonna quote it verbatim, but he was talking about how his father wanted to do something, and then ended up doing something else and still failed. And he was like, Jim Carrey was basically saying like, go for your dreams, because you might think you're taking the safe route by doing all this other stuff, and you can still fail at that too. And so I have all these experiences where I've done so many jobs that what I didn't mention in the mix of all this is also I waited tables for a little while. I was like a waiter at Applebee's working with friends. So I've done so many different jobs. I had a friend who did his own like moving service,
Yeah.
and moving people in and out of homes and apartments, and I would, do some side jobs under the table with him. I've worked so many different jobs, dude. So we're talking like, I was a delivery boy when I was like a teenager. Amazon and shit didn't exist back then. I would be on a bike or on the train taking packages from one company to another.
Right.
Beach lifeguard, swim instructor. I was a waiter. I was a mover.
Yeah.
I worked when I was in college. I worked as a like campus security. Do you know what I mean? So many different jobs, and then working at a gym, and then getting into real estate. There's things I'm even like forgetting, and also I sold weed for a little while. I don't know how far but I'm just gonna keep it real. Like nothing crazy. I wasn't no like big time drug dealer or whatever, but I did. I sold weed for a little while, and I sold weed in college just to help me with money. You know what I mean? Like, and campus, and I don't condone any of that stuff. I'm just saying like it's just what I did. But I never wanted to go that route at all. I never wanted to be like you know, it's one thing to like grow up in the hood, and it's
Yeah.
another thing to really like try and go that street life route because I had too many friends that
Yeah. But I am gonna ask you, how does a day of work look like for you?
a day of work right now.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the good thing about my job is I'm sitting down half the time,
Mm.
and I also get to walk around a lot because I show people apartments.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So I give people tours and stuff like that.
Cool.
So I lost my train of thought because I was thinking about the other stuff real quick. But yeah, I'm gonna answer that question, but just to finish my train of thought when
Yeah,
the camera
yeah,
got
yeah.
cut off, because I was pretty much at the end of it. Is I've done all these jobs and had all these like failures and successes in life, and at some point when you reach a certain age, you realize that the stuff that you thought you wanted to do is not really necessary. Like I don't just if let's say I become a famous rapper, if I had become one,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean I would have been happy. You know what I mean? That doesn't
Right.
mean that if I would have gotten rich, that doesn't mean I would have been a happy person. And I realize now that I have tons of blessings in life, man. Like I'm really, really blessed just to be where I are. Like there, are, you know, places in the world that are falling apart, man. There's like war, you know, in other places in the world, and like I feel really blessed to be where I am, and I feel really blessed to have my job. You know, like I have a roof over my head, I have clothes on my back, I have food in my fridge. You know, I think I live kind of like a middle class life now. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know, to someone, and I have to remind myself,
Right.
you know, that to look at my life and be like, yo, not bad for a kid from the projects. You know what I mean? Like
That's good.
I'm doing well. I'm really blessed. And so yeah, you know, my job now, I enjoy it because I'm a people person, and
Right.
so, you know, prospects come in, they're looking for apartments.
Mm-hmm.
And I get to show them around this beautiful building, you know, that I work in. I'm not gonna tell people where I work because I don't want people looking for me. But I work in Manhattan, in Midtown Manhattan, and I lease apartments for a living, basically. And I just meet a lot of great people, some strange characters too,
I see.
and you can probably tell I like conversing with people. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. And
That's good.
I've worked jobs where I've sat down the whole day,
Mhm.
like you know. I remember when I was working in the hospital and office, like I'm just sitting down the whole day. And I've worked jobs where I've had to stand up the whole day, like when I was a waiter and you're on your feet the whole day. And I like that in my job, I get a balance. You know, I'm behind the desk half the time doing like administrative stuff, and then I'm also getting up. Part of my job is assisting the residents, you know, when they have issues, coordinating with our maintenance team, you know, our concierge desk downstairs, and helping manage the building. But primarily, I'm a leasing professional. So I give people tours and rent out the apartments to them.
All right. All right.
Yeah.
How would you describe yourself?
In what way?
How would you describe yourself?
That's such a vague question. Let me see.
Whatever comes to mind.
The first word that comes to mind is resilient. I'm a resilient person. I don't know if I would have said that years ago, but I always was, just because of all the obstacles I've gone through in life.
Yeah.
And there's been moments, you know, in between all these jobs that I was talking about, all these different professions I did, where I was unemployed.
Right.
That was always rough too. You know, you get laid off or something, or there was one time I left. I stopped working at Asphalt Green because I tried to move to California.
Right.
You know, and I was out there in California with, you know, whatever little money I had saved, and ended up running out. And I've always managed to bounce back, you know. And my brother one time was like telling me, like, there was a moment I was unemployed some years back, and he was just like, dude, you're gonna bounce back, like you always bounce back, you know. So yeah, resilient. I feel resilient.
Okay.
You know.
And how would others describe you?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is talkative.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I feel like my friends always point out you know, I get excited, man. Like you know, I'm a
Right.
people person. I like to be around people, love my friends and family, and because of that, I get caught up in the moment. You know, to be
Right.
whatever.
Right.
And sometimes my energy, I feel like, could be too much. And people just want to chill, and they're on some chill shit, and
Right.
I'm talking, I'm at whatever. So I feel like people think I'm talkative. So I try to be a better listener.
Okay.
No.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah.
I'm working on it. I'm working on being a better
Hey,
listener.
it's
Yeah.
never too late, right?
Yeah.
What's your biggest strength?
My biggest strength, is I think my creativity.
Awesome.
Being able to think creatively has helped me in a lot of different situations.
Can you tell me a little bit, no, tell me a story on how being creative helped you?
Yeah, so I could tie a lot of what I was talking about, and
Mm.
I don't know what's gonna get actually put in the video, what you edit out or whatever, but so let's say my job now, right? I show apartments for a
Yeah.
living, right? In the building that I work in, lease them out. I have this background in graphic design. My degree is in graphic design. I went to school. I took advertising classes on that track, and I'm able to market my apartments pretty well. Like I take my own photos of the
Yeah.
apartments in our building. I make my own videos, and I created a YouTube channel for our building. And so I'm able to use my creativity, you know, as far as photography and you know, making videos and stuff, and use it in my job now.
That's
So
awesome.
even though I might not be doing what was my original plan
Right.
years back, I still use my creativity in my job today.
That's awesome.
And I think it gives me an advantage, because when I look at other people who do what I do, and I go online, like their stuff's not that good, you know. The only time it's good is when they outsource it, right? They
Right.
get an actual professional photographer to come in and do that. We have a marketing department in our company, and you know, we work with them and everything, but it helps me do things faster and more efficient.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. What is your biggest weakness?
I don't have one. No, just kidding. My biggest weakness. Yeah, it's tough. I'm trying to think. Like, what's something I don't do well that I feel like is super, you know, that I have to change. My biggest weakness.
Maybe you talk more than you listen.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, but I feel like I said that one already.
Because you said it right. That's why.
Yeah, and even with like in my job, right, with you know prospects, right, they're coming in, they're looking at apartments, you know, they ask questions and I answer them and I give them information, and I've gotten a lot better at it too, where I give less information now than what's needed, you know, and to make sure to ask more questions.
Right.
And so this is stuff, yeah, I think that's my biggest weakness is I guess it would be that, you know, I was trying to think of something different because I already said that.
Yeah.
For
But
a
if you
different
if you
question,
have
but-
something different, you could say it. You know.
Not necessarily, no, I think that probably is the biggest thing. And I'm not just even outside of work, I think when it comes to like conversations with people in general,
Yeah.
you know, like I have to remember to like it's different now because you're interviewing me, so you're asking me questions,
Yeah.
but I have to remember to ask other people questions
Right.
and to care about what other people say.
Okay.
You know, I definitely think I'm one of those people who I'm listening to somebody, and it's usually because I'm thinking, well, what am I gonna say after them?
Okay.
You know,
So you
kinda
listen
thing.
to respond
Yes,
rather than to
yeah,
understand and.
yeah, and you know,
Okay.
we were before you started recording, we were talking about you know the books and everything,
Yeah.
and so I've read some great books, and I don't know if you ever read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. You have?
It's there.
Ah, boom,
Yeah.
perfect. Perfect. Yeah, I read this book some years ago, and I actually just finished a course that my company actually sponsored for me. They had, you know, I do pretty well at work, and they were like, they, I guess, chose me to partake in this course, a Dale Carnegie course for sales training. And it was great because I had read that book years ago, and that book talks about he talks about you know, be interested in other people. Right. It's better to be interested than to try and be interesting.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the mistake I made. And this is all this all comes from a place of fear and you know, we want people to like us and so, you know, I feel like I need to impress people and, you know, and do all this stuff. So I always want to talk, or I always want people to know what my opinion is, or how I feel, or, you know, or say something that, you know, would win them over or whatever, you know. which is, I guess, part of sales. You need to, do that. But in the process, I used to always forget to just listen to other people, care
Right.
about them, and then sometimes I wonder why some people don't like me. You know what I mean? It's because, like, yo, they probably feel like this dude, he doesn't care about anything I have to say.
Right.
It's hurt me. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, it's hurt me in relationships with women,
I see.
where I was probably just a selfish,
Okay.
person and not whatever. So, yeah, that's definitely my biggest weakness.
I see.
Would be, and I'm much better at it now.
That's good. Good.
Working on it. So, to listen to people more, to care about. It's not that I don't care about people. I love people,
Yeah.
but to not be so caught up in myself or worried about what other people think of me, which has changed because I always worried about people. I think maybe a few years ago, if I was like, you get to that point where it's just like, maybe it's just age. Like, I don't give a fuck what people think about me,
Right.
Like, and I mean that in the nicest way. Like,
Right.
I don't care as much, and that's a good thing. It's not, that might sound selfish, but it's a good thing because then it allows me to just care about other people.
Exactly.
Like, this person may or may not like me, and that's okay. It doesn't matter if
Yeah.
they don't like me,
Yeah,
but like,
yeah.
if I'm getting to know somebody, let me ask how they're doing. Let me genuinely listen to what they have to say,
Right.
and I don't always get that right. So that's why I would say it's still my biggest weakness, but at least I recognize it.
Right.
Where for years, especially when I was
I
younger,
think that's how it starts. You
Didn't
gotta
know.
recognize it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's half the battle.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What
See, I'm
are-
doing it right now because I know you want to ask another question, and,
It's fine.
and I'm like still talking about. Go ahead. Go
No,
ahead.
that's great. Man. You're doing great. I love it. What are you most proud of?
What am I most proud of? I think I'm most proud of just being on my own 2 feet. Do you know what I mean?
Awesome.
Yeah, like I said, just when I said resilient, like to go through all those things and all right, I to put it more specifically, I'm most proud that I've changed my thinking to stop worrying about all the things I don't have or that didn't happen or that I didn't get to accomplish.
Yeah.
And switching, because now I see the cup is half full, and for
Right.
so many years I saw the cup is half empty,
Mm.
and so I think that's the thing I'm most proud of is that I just feel like I enjoy life a lot better. I live in the present moment,
That's
you
good.
know.
Good.
Yeah,
I
that's-
love that.
yeah.
I love that. I really do.
Change my way of thinking.
No, yeah. That's good. That's very important. What are you least proud of?
The fact that it took me so long
Mm.
to change that
Okay.
thought, that perception,
Okay.
because I feel like I really went through certainly all of my 20s and most of my 30s feeling, I guess, like some guilt or shame or not proud of myself, like I didn't accomplish, I didn't do, I didn't do everything I set out to do, when I don't feel like that at all now,
Awesome.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the human experience.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that even when they do what they set out to do, they still don't feel proud or they don't feel like they belong and they just,
Mhm.
So I think that's part of the human experience.
Mhm.
And then, yeah,
It's also to do these things and not worry about the outcome,
right, yeah,
like I started drawing again and painting again, just a
Mhm.
couple of years ago, I actually just bought a microphone stand because I'm going to start recording music again, and it's like now I'm not worried about like
maybe
being
you
some
can
famous
show us
rapper.
your painting.
Yeah, of
Awesome,
course.
awesome.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm proud of switching that perception, and I'm least, I guess, what was your question? Least proud
Least
of?
proud of, yeah.
Least proud of that I didn't do that for so many years.
Okay.
Can't get that time back. So
Hey,
Yeah.
you're still alive.
right.
man. As long
Mhm.
as you live, man.
Yeah.
As long as you live. All right. What is something people wouldn't know about you unless you tell them?
There's something people wouldn't know about me unless I tell them. That I've saved dozens of people's lives.
That's right.
Yeah, in the literal sense. Like a
Literal.
lifeguarding at the beach, man. Like I've saved people from dying, dozens and dozens. I mean, I lost count, but it's got to be north of like 60, 70 people, mostly little kids. I mean,
Yeah.
but some adults too
Yeah.
that we've saved. I've done CPR on people. yeah, I forget sometimes, like, you know, I'm a hero. And this is what I mean too. Like,
there are people that are alive.
Yes, because of me. And I you know, I loved lifeguarding and, you know, I was always proud of that. But I forget sometimes that I have a lot of things that I did to be proud of, you know, because it's so caught up in the negative, you know. And I'm so grateful that today I walk through life with gratitude.
Awesome.
You know,
I love that, man.
But yeah, proud of that for sure.
Oh yeah, man.
And that's something people wouldn't know about me. Yeah.
And
I don't tell people that. I don't walk around like, yo, I saved, I saved 70 people's lives. Like, no, you know, people would probably never know that. Yeah.
Exactly. I think, I think now, back in the days, I think it would be easy to spot us as lifeguards and say, oh yeah, this guy, he looks like he works at a beach or a pool.
Yeah.
He saves lives, because you see the tan. You see you in the winter time, and then the summertime, you know.
Right. Different. We don't even recognize each other.
You know, exactly. So, so you could kind of tell.
Yeah.
Especially if you're a swimmer.
Yeah. But swimmers can spot other swimmers.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's true. That's true. And even when you don't know that person personally, the fact, like, other swimmers might know them, and they just end up being your friends or acquaintances. You know. Right. So yeah, man.
I can always spot dancers too.
Yeah. How come?
I dated a dancer I think you met her, my ex from Argentina. Wonderful woman. And
AG?
No, she was from Buenos Aires, from Argentina.
But like
when I was working at Asphalt Green when we dated, so she would come around. She would come to Orchard Beach. She's from Argentina. So Florencia, if you ever see this, because they point their toes when they sit down. Like, if they done ballet, particularly, you know, women, if they did ballet when they were girls, I could always spot them, because if they're sitting down a certain way, their posture's also very good. Yeah. The way they stand, you know, and they point their toes a lot. Random fucking thought. I don't know why I said that, but that's Swimmers just have a more lanky walk sometimes. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like,
we walk like with this pride too. So, like, well, if you become a lifeguard as a swimmer. Especially a beach lifeguard. I think there's a walk to us.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a lifeguard.
A lot of athletes. Like, there's this dude, I have a friend, you know, we met like a year or so ago. When I first met, you know, some mutual friends introduced. When I first met him, I told him, yo, you play rugby, right? And I was spot on. I could just tell by the way he stood, you know, and looking at his legs and like his posture, that I was like, yo, you look like a rugby player. And I was right. He's like, yeah, I play rugby. How'd you know? I was like, I can just tell just by your posture, you know? Cool. Like, my younger brother, he played basketball in high school, Columbus High School right here in the Bronx. And, like, you look at my brother, you know, tall, slim, but also the way he walks, like, he walks like a ball player. Yeah. You know what I mean? I don't know. This is a random thought.
I know, that's fine. That's fine. I love it. What advice would you give your younger self?
Don't be afraid. I made a lot of decisions based off fear, where I had all this talent, all this desire, this energy, and I just felt like, well, fuck, it's never gonna happen. So you don't end up trying. Yeah, I would advise, you know, younger me, whether that's like the little boy Danny or teenage Danny, to just do it. Like, don't worry about the outcome. Just do it. You know, go for it, because you never know what could happen. Not just with all the career stuff or, you know, those goals, but even like girls, you know what I mean? Like, you know, you're worried about the outcome, right? So is that girl you like, and you know, you know,
the more we like the girl, the more shy we feel.
Right, the more shy we feel, the more we're attracted to it, and that's, you know, that's part of the human experience too. But yeah, I would tell myself, you know, don't be afraid. Or more accurately, do it anyway, even if you are afraid. Like, like they say, courage is not the absence of fear, but I don't know, the ability to do it despite your fear.
Right.
You know?
Right. And this is my last question to you. What advice would you give the youth of today?
I think the biggest thing, there's so many things I could say, but we'll be here forever. I think the biggest thing that comes to mind is put your phone down. Like, you know, my sister, just want to give a shout out to all my siblings, Gabriel, Maya, Belina, David, I love you all. Rest in peace, Anthony and Sonny. Random thought, but my sister and her husband, my brother-in-law, you know, they have two little boys, my nephews, Anthony and Nathan. They're 10 and 7. They limit their screen time. And I think it's something that parents don't do enough. Like I think it's so good that they do that. These kids, I think they only get like a half an hour screen time, whatever that might be, whether it's a tablet or watching TV. They're they're looking at the screen for less than an hour. And for most kids today, that's just not the case.
Yeah.
And look, I play video games. You know, I do stuff too. It's a little easier, I think, for us because, like I said, we still went outside to play.
Yeah.
These kids today are just so involved. I have other little cousins and nephews and nieces or friends with kids, and you know they're just not. We could be anywhere on vacation somewhere beautiful, and they're just, you know, they're 13, 14. You know, they're just scrolling on their phone,
Yeah.
and you're really disconnected to the world, and you're not experiencing it firsthand.
Yeah.
I still struggle with it. So even as an adult, the technology will capture all of us. It's
Yeah.
very addictive, like
Yeah.
we were saying. So if you're going someplace and you're filming everything you're doing, right? And, you know, you want to capture this moment, you know, something, fireworks are happening, you're traveling somewhere amazing, and you're actually, instead of looking at it and experiencing it firsthand with your own eyes and
Yeah.
being in this moment, you're on your phone and you're filming the thing and you're looking at your screen when you're right in front of it and right there. And I think that, you know, to the younger generation, I'm basically talking to Gen Z and I guess Gen Alpha, right? Like, you're a millennial.
Yeah.
I'm actually like the tail end of Gen X, you know? I'm like on the cusp of
Right.
Gen X millennial, but I'm technically speaking, I'm Generation X, you're a millennial.
Mhm.
But for Gen Z and Gen Alpha, who really, really grew up with smartphones and everything and social media, it's tough for them. And so my best advice would be, you don't have to record or take a picture of everything you see.
Right.
Like, you know, this idea that if there are no photos, it never happened. You don't have to document it, because I think I heard this woman, I forget her name, I wish I could. She's, you know, creates content too, this British woman, where she was kind of saying, when you look back on your life, you might have all these photos and stuff and all these whatever. You're gonna look back and realize, wow, I was at this amazing place and I didn't really experience it fully.
Right.
So it's better to have this vague memory of something that happened 20 years ago,
Yeah.
which happens to me all the time. I think about cool experiences with friends, you know, that I don't have any photos of. There's no
Yeah.
document that it ever happened,
Same.
you know, and I have these wonderful memories of times with friends. And maybe it's so long ago that I don't remember all the details, but the memory is fond in my heart,
The experience.
you know, because of
Yeah.
it, because I was there and I was present in the moment. And you cannot be present in the moment if you are staring at your screen while you're somewhere,
Yeah.
or if you're around people and you're caught up on
On your phone.
on your phone, looking at how many likes you have or posting, you know. And so one piece of advice that I follow, I still love, I'm a creative, so I love photography, so I still take photos when I travel and when I do stuff. But one thing I started doing a few years ago that helped at least a little bit was, and I make this advice to the youth, whoever's watching,
Yeah.
is don't post while you're somewhere. Sure, right?
Okay.
Like,
I see.
you know, so I was in Egypt last year, right? Of course, when I was at the Sphinx and the Great Pyramids and all these temples, I took some photos. Take the photos, put the phone back in your pocket. You got the photo, and now be there, be present in the moment. You know, I didn't post my photos from Egypt till I got back from Egypt and I was back home in the States, you know. And when I got dead time to kill, just in my house before falling asleep, whatever, you know, you can do it then. So, yeah, I understand you want to take the photos, yeah, sure, for the memories, but just be careful with social media. It's not the real world, you know. We talk about worrying about impressing people. It's even worse for kids today because they're worried about impressing people they don't even fucking know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
people online they just met, they follow each other, or maybe they got a Instagram or YouTube that's blowing up, and now you got followers. You've never met them in your life,
Yeah.
and you're worried about their comments and their likes. Like, fuck all that shit. Like, live life.
Yeah.
Put your phone away and be present in every single moment when you're amongst friends in a social setting.
Yeah.
You know, when you're at whatever, school, work, with family especially. You know, you don't know when those moments will end and never come back. You know, life changes, so
Yeah.
be in the present moment as much as possible.
All right. Where can people find you?
Find me?
Yeah, like YouTube or Instagram.
That's a good question. So my Instagram is danny.chek. I've been toggling private and public. I have it private right now, but now that I'm going to start eventually recording music again, once I get my new microphone and everything, I'll probably make it public again. I'm on YouTube. I think it's the same, Danny Chek. So Chek is my like rap moniker, and that's my graffiti tag. I'll say it because I'm not out there in the street writing anymore. But yeah, CHEK. Danny.Chek is my Instagram. Chek Music on YouTube. The stuff I have on there is like 8-9 years old, so you can find me on there. I'm not on like Twitter X.
Okay.
Not on there, but
All right.
I don't know.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
All right, I love it.
Yeah. Thank you, brother, for having me.